My name is Gordon Glass, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Malawi from 1965 to 1967 after training at Syracuse University. And I was an elementary teacher in a pilot project to go to some elementary schools in rural Malawi. And I was stationed in Boma, which was the center of Mchinji district on the border between Malawi and Zambia. I had a wonderful headmaster. His name was Benny Mijoni, and he was about half as tall as I was. And we were known for walking around the village together, and they would talk about the big man and the small man. But he was a wonderful headmaster, and his wife, Mrs. Mijoni, was a teacher. And they have actually kept in contact with me most over the years. And so my wife Marcia had not been to their village, and we went and stayed for a couple of weeks in 2010. And she got to experience and understand the everyday aspect of village life, which virtually is unchanged in 50 years. It's almost the same. They still go to the garden every day. They still rely on growing maize and vegetables. And they live a steady life, but vulnerable life, like many in Africa do. I just have a couple of, I think, stories that will always stay with me. I was an elementary teacher, and one day I had a student named Paisa Paitana, and he came to see me and he said, "Mr. Teacher, will you go with me to the main road?" And of course, there's only one main road going through Boma to Zambia. And I said, "I can." So after school, we walked the mile or so down to the main road. And he took me across the road where there was a pole, and on the pole were two wires. And he said, "Mr. Teacher, they tell me that words go through those wires, but I want to know how they get the words into the wire to send them along the wire." And I looked at Paisa Paitana, who was this very thoughtful, kind of a different kid. And I said, "Paisa Paitana, I don't think I can tell you how the words go through the wire, but maybe tomorrow we can do something in school that will help you understand that." So I went home, and I got 2 cans, and I got a length of string, and we made a string telephone from one classroom out the window to another porch. And the kids all tried talking and listening to the vibrations of the voice coming through the string. And I will forever remember that, because I actually didn't know what the physics of telephone communication was myself, but I knew that. And to me, that was why teaching was always so rewarding, because the kids were extraordinarily interested and motivated in their learning. But in 2010, when I went back, I visited my school, which now has 10 classrooms instead of 8, now has 3,100 students instead of 400. The teachers are overwhelmed, but they had a parent advisory council, and they were sitting up on the porch, and this man stood and he said, "Mr. Glass, how is Mr. Hornberg?" Well, Mr. Hornberg had been my partner who ended up being an alcoholic and left after about 8 months. So he left in 1965, probably early 1966. And yet this student who had been in Standard 4, his first greeting was to me and to inquire about the health of Mr. Hornberg. So 1966 to 2010, the memory was there of this person, and he had, the politeness was, of course, to inquire about how is he doing. The last story I'd like to share is I'm a retired family counselor, and parenting was one of my areas of expertise, particularly parenting of teenagers. And we thankfully have gotten to know the children and grandchildren of the Mijonis and the Puris. It's been wonderful. And we were staying our last night in Lilongwe on our last visit, and Mr. and Mrs. Mijoni's son is a major in the Army, and his wife is a very nice person, and she said to me, she said, "What do you do?" She has a son who is about 12 years old, and he in fact took me to meet his teachers at his school, very interested. His name, interestingly, is Gordon, and they said, "Oh, that is for you, Mr. Glass." So anyway, she said, Gordon comes home from school and they turn the TV on with his cousin, and there's 2 channels in Lilongwe, and I can't get them to do their homework. They want to watch TV. And I just smiled to myself and I thought, you know, there's a lot of differences in culture, but as cultures change, there's a lot of similarities too. And so I asked her, well, what have you tried? And then I said, well, you may want to try this or that and see how that goes, knowing that your son and his cousin will be very upset with you, and you'll have to stay calm and matter of fact, just like I would have told a parent here in Farmington with the same kind of concern. So my Peace Corps experience is one of wonderful connection and wonderful stories, and an experience that's influenced my own life in many different ways. And I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the opportunity to share the stories.
Katundi yes.